We have some news here, not surprising to me. It is from the Wells Fargo Gallup Small Business Index. U.S. small business owners' net capital spending intentions for the next year, the next 12 months, plunged to minus 14 in November. Now, what does that mean? Minus 14 is the lowest level in more than 2 years, according to the Wells Fargo Gallup Small Business Index. This is down from net capital spending intentions of minus 1 in July. What this means is that the nation's small business owners intend to pull back on business investment even more than they intended to in July, because they have negative expectations, economic growth for the next 12 months. Now, I'll give you an illustration. In 2004, 2005, 2006, 2007, this index, the Wells Fargo Gallup Small Business Index on capital spending intentions, was at anywhere from plus 28 to plus 16. Its low was minus 23 in 2009. Now it is minus 14. We've had therefore a net drop-off of 30 points. You see it on the graph, it made a little bit more sense. But as recently as 2008, small business net capital expenditure expansion spending was big. It was huge. And now it's at minus 14 for the next. So that means no economic growth. It means small business, which does most of the hiring, isn't going to be doing any. So the small business guys are not going to expand in their businesses this year. According to the latest survey that we just had, the 12-month expenditure, and by the way, the survey came out in November. What happened in November to dampen the spirits of small business people, I wonder? But their projections on capital net capital investment next 12 months, negative 14. And this dovetails with a story from the Federal Reserve, ladies and gentlemen. The Fed is projecting the unemployment rate will stay elevated until late 2015, suggesting that it's going to keep short-term interest rates low for the next 3 years. Latest economic forecast released yesterday after the Fed's final meeting of the year. Little changed from September, but they coincided with a new communication strategy announced by the Fed that links future interest rate increases with unemployment below 6.5%. Unemployment rate's now 7.7%, and the Fed says that's not changing for 3 years. I want to take the occasion of this report to go back and revisit something that the Washington Inside the Beltway intelligentsia uses in their analysis of the fiscal cliff and what Obama wants. If you've heard it once, I'm sure you've heard it a gazillion times, that Obama doesn't want to start second term with a recession. He doesn't want unemployment going back up. He doesn't want it. He wants a great legacy for second term. He doesn't want... Blow that out the water. That's no way. Obama doesn't care about economic growth. That's not what he's into. He's into government growth. It isn't going to get any better. There are no expectations even that it's going to get any better, folks. Sad fact is that among people who vote, we appear to be outnumbered. We appear to be outnumbered by people who don't care whether the economy is going to grow or not. And the sad reason for that is that they simply don't understand economics. They don't understand the relationship of price to supply, for example. Something as simple as that. They just don't understand the economics 101 characteristics. It's really an amazing thing to see how successfully the left has blown up education in this country. You know, before the election, we're all speculating if we reached a tipping point or not. I don't know how you can say we haven't among people who vote. Now, maybe nationwide we haven't, but what difference does it make? We are governed by the people who vote. And the people who voted, it was pretty clear the takers dominate. And that's exactly what this was. A lot of people want to try to sugarcoat this. No, these are people that are morons, Rush. They didn't really know what they were doing. I have decided to formally reject that, just like I reject the notion that people voting to raise taxes on themselves in California was the result of them being fooled. I don't believe that. I think they knew exactly what they were doing. And I think of the people who vote in this country, the low information voter is dominating, and the low information voter really is not aware of how low information he or she is, and they are voting for the status quo. They're voting for more of what life was like the past 4 years. They clearly didn't vote for any change in it. And don't tell me that Obama convinced them he wanted the economy to grow and that that's not what he convinced them of. He convinced them that the problem is that the rich aren't paying their fair share. That was his theme. His theme was the successful and the achieved are not paying their fair share, and that he was going to get it from them. And then the inference is that once he gets it from them, they're going to end up with more than what they've got now. Back to this story on the Senate Democrats urging the undoing of Obamacare. This really, really is a big story, and it's not getting any play at all in the mainstream media. But one of the reasons this is happening is that in these states, medical device makers, for example, in blue states are going to see their taxes go up. Their businesses are going to be penalized. Brand new fees, brand new charges. And all of these Democrats that are now urging the undoing of the funding mechanism for all this, they knew exactly what was happening beforehand. They voted for this knowing exactly where this was going to take them. And now that they got it passed, now that they were loyal Democrats, and now that they did what they had to do to support the president, now it's time to try to undo this. Get this passage. It turns out that Senators Franken and Klobuchar have been enlightened of these facts by medical device companies in their home state of Minnesota, which is, I think, the largest, or one of the largest medical device manufacturing states in the country. Franken and Klobuchar have joined 16 other Democrat senators who now share the same view, that Obamacare must be unfunded. In a letter to Senate Majority Leader Dingy Harry, these senators have asked for a delay in the medical device tax. But what they're actually aiming for is a full repeal of this part of the law. So the delay repeal bug, this desire to delay and repeal, appears to have bitten members of the healthcare industry as well. There were some doctors. I know you'll remember this. There were some doctors, hospitals, and drug companies who originally supported Obamacare. You know why? Because it was chock full of subsidies for many of them. It was why GE supports the government. They were getting subsidies to do windmills and stuff. $800 billion here, $700 billion there, some $200 billion over here. The same thing Obama was promising various hospitals, doctors, medical groups, exemptions if they would support his plan overall. And of course, people, rather than put the country first, put their self-interest first. And in this case, it was selfishness, not self-interest. And they went ahead and they said, look, if the rest of the country's going over the tubes, but I can keep myself from going over the tubes, I'll do it. And that's what happened. Now they want out of it, knowing full well what they supported. In a way, this is outrageous. Not just these senators, but there were some doctors, there were some hospitals. Remember the AMA early on was all for Obamacare? Because everybody was trying to suck up to Obama. Some were scared of Obama, didn't want to get on his bad side. They knew what kind of guy he is, didn't want to be punished. That's a large part of it, by the way. That's a very big part of it. When you have statist-type leaders like Obama who are willing to use the federal government to punish, you don't really want to risk it. You don't even want to get on his bad side. So if he wants Obamacare and it's going to destroy the healthcare system, but you get an exemption carved out, you'll do it in order to keep the government off your back. And that's exactly the threat that Obama used. Okay, so now they supported it because they were going to get their carve-outs, their exemptions, their subsidies. Now, all of a sudden, it's 18 senators and some of these doctors and hospitals and medical groups who all of a sudden now, after it's passed, and after John Roberts contorted himself like a pretzel to find this stupid law constitutional, now they want out of it. Gutless wonders, every damn one of them. Where were they, knowing full well where this was going? Where were they before this thing passed? Where was their guts? Where was their courage to stand up and oppose it? They knew full well this day was coming. These people did not have to pass the bill to find out what was in it. Everybody knew what was in this. It was just an easy cop-out to say, I don't know what's in it. It was a cop-out to say, well, I'm supporting my president. Well, that's a cop-out. I'm staying loyal to my party. It's a cop-out. I want insurance for 30 million people that are not covered. Whatever silly excuse they used to justify their support of this thing. They're worthless. They're worthless then. But now, here's the thing. I don't know whether they're going to be able to succeed. There's 18 senators want to defund this because all politics is local in this case. And now it's going to hurt their constituents. And now that might mean it's going to hurt their reelection and it's going to hurt their state economies. But all of this, I contend, was known before these people all got on board this monstrosity. The Independent Payment Advisory Panel. This is the death panel. The Independent Payment Advisory Panel, the board of unelected officials that will determine which medical treatments and procedures are too costly for some patients, is supposed to impose cost controls on federal medical spending. Threatened by these cost containment provisions, these members of the healthcare industry and these senators are now intent on eliminating the panel. They want to eliminate the death panel. Again, it's the Independent Payment Advisory Panel. This is the bunch that determines who gets paid, how much they get paid, who gets treated, how much is going to be spent on the treatment, and who doesn't get treated, and instead who gets the pill. And now, after it's been found constitutional by gutless Supreme Court Chief Justice, after it's been found constitutional, everybody being harmed by it now comes forward. Quietly, by the way, because you're not going to see much of this in the drive-by media. This is still in the never surrender crowd media, led by me, of course. And they're working under the covers, under the scene, behind the scenes to try to prevent this debacle from happening. And as Dr. Susan Berry concludes in her piece here, it appears that many of the groups which originally supported Obamacare want to be able to have their cake and eat it too, and Senate Democrats seem poised to allow them to do just that. The question is, without these sources of funding for all the Obamacare mandates and without cost containment, how will the law be implemented at all? See, let's review very quickly the medical professionals, the doctors, the hospitals, drug companies, and the senators. They want this independent payment panel disbanded. Well, that's the bunch that determines what gets spent and what doesn't. They determine who gets what and who doesn't get what. They want to disband that panel, and they want to be exempted, in this case, from the new taxes on the medical devices and whatever other thing that, I don't know what Schumer wants his people protected from, but in Minnesota, it's medical device manufacturers. So they want Obamacare to stay in force for everybody else, but they want the mechanism to penalize their constituents ripped out of the law. And so the question is, well, if you rip the funding mechanism out of the law, and then you take this Independent Payment Advisory Panel and you rip them out of the law, that's cost containment, ostensibly. That's the bunch that determines what we're going to spend and what we're not going to spend. So that's cost containment. You take those two things out, how can you implement the law at all? That's where this is headed. Now, don't misunderstand. I don't expect this not to be implemented. I'm not pointing this out for that reason. I'm just telling you, there's 16 senators and a bunch of these people, all of them just couldn't wait to vote for this thing, who now want to be exempted from it, folks. They're not going to the mat to keep you exempted. They want their own constituents and themselves exempted. That's what having their cake and eating it too means. They voted for it and they got credit. Now they want to not be penalized. But it's the most gutless. Yeah, so suddenly all these Democrats now want waivers from Obamacare, and they want funding mechanisms wiped out of the legislation. Elizabeth Warren, for example, she gave her wholehearted approval to Obamacare, and now she is one of the senators that wants to take that back. She's an Indian giver. Yes, I intended to say that, Snurdly. Elizabeth Warren, heap big squaw Indian giver.